Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Antonovich. I work for the Sacramento County Office of Education. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our session today, the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS, Beyond the Basics for Teachers. This training is brought to you by the California Department of Education, and it's designed for CERS users who have access to CERS data. So our teachers who have students rostered to them in the system and other LEA staff who are interested in CERS. Now, this may include staff who have access to CERS, but don't have that administrator role. We're not responsible for managing users or rostering students. And as always, while all are welcome to join us today, we do want to note that a different CERS training beyond the basics for coordinators and administrators happened this morning, and a second one is happening next week. We also want to acknowledge that this is an intermediate level training. It builds upon that introduction to CERS training that took place in summer and fall of 2023. The recordings for those trainings are linked in your resource guide. All right, you are in very capable hands today with your trainers who have a lot of CERS experience. We have with us Stephanie Fortunato from the Los Angeles County Office of Education and Alicia Sanborn from the Washington Unified School District. They'll introduce themselves as they get going. And today our agenda aligns with our success criteria, so let's take a look at the things we will be able to do at the end of each section. So today you're going to be able to create custom groups using advanced filters. You'll view features specific to interim assessments. You'll be able to generate individual student reports, or ISRs as we call them, either individually or in bulk. You're going to be able to locate those CERS resources, and you are going to get answers to your CERS questions. Now, this training allows us to take CERS beyond the basics that were covered in that introduction training and really dig in further. So, for example, we briefly covered custom groups or features specific to interim assessments back in the summer and fall, but today we're going to cover them in far more detail. We are very excited to go beyond the basics with you today, and I'm going to pass you along to your trainers.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alicia Sanborn, and I work in Washington Unified in Fresno County. And my day-to-day job is the LEA coordinator within our district, but then I'm also our director of early literacy as well. All right, so our first section of today's Beyond the Basics training will cover custom groups and advanced filters. This feature can be a powerful tool for teachers as they monitor progress for a set of selected students within their class. Let's start with a very brief recap of who has access to CERS. So all California LEA educators have access to CERS once they are assigned a test operations management system or a TOMS account. However, your user role in TOMS determines which data you may have access to in CERS. And let's break down that access in CERS by role. LEA level roles have access to all of your students in the LEA. Site roles may have access to results for all students in the school they are associated with in TOMS. And teacher roles may have access to reports for students in any student groups assigned to them by LEA coordinators like me or site coordinators. That last piece is the important one. Teachers have access to results for students if student groups have been assigned to them by either the LEA coordinator or site coordinator. The process for assigning students is called rostering and must be done for teachers to access those student results. So, in addition to setting up the roles in TOMS as a test examiner or test administrator, the LEA or site coordinator must roster teachers to students in CERS. Without this rostering piece, teachers will not be able to see any data in CERS. It's an important one. All right, so once students have been rostered in CERS, the teachers will be able to see results in CERS through groups. But before we dive deeper into the customized groups, we want to briefly review assigned groups and the My Groups. When a teacher accesses CERS and has students rostered to them, they will see their group of students in the assigned group section of CERS on the homepage. To frame this another way, the assigned groups are those that have been rostered to the teacher by that LEA coordinator or site coordinator. If rostering has not been completed, the teacher will not see any linked group lists in the assigned groups tab. From the assigned groups tab, Teachers may create customized groups, which will appear in My Groups tab. Users don't have the ability to change or alter their assigned groups. However, they can create custom groups from those students. And to address the one question we get often, yes, teachers can take students from their different assigned groups and add them all or one by one to the same custom group. So if you have 5 students from your grade 6 group and 13 students from your grade 7 group that you want to add to a custom group, you absolutely can. Creating and editing groups is very easy and only takes a few minutes. We have included step-by-step instructions for creating custom groups in your resource guide, and I will be demonstrating here very soon for you. So why create custom groups? Custom groups can allow you as a teacher to go beyond the basics when you're viewing your student data in CERS. Custom groups can help monitor progress for a set of selected students within the class. For example, if a group of students is receiving Tier 2 interventions, a custom group can be created to monitor progress on the interim assessments throughout the year or review the summative assessment results for that group of students. Custom groups may also be created for categories of student groups that are not available in the advanced filters. For example, one might want to create a custom group for their special education students or their students who have a 504 plan. A custom group may be created to include a subset of an existing student group with the advanced filters feature. For example, one might create a custom group for students that have been reclassified within the past 4 years, and I'll use that in my demo here just momentarily. Additionally, if a teacher has multiple assigned groups containing students with the same grade level, custom groups could be created to pull students from each class into one large group. This can be handy for teachers with assigned groups that contain less than 30 students. If the teacher can pull students with the same grade level from each assigned group to create a custom group of 30 or more students, they would be able to view target reports for the smarter, balanced summative assessments for ELA and math. Another example would be to create one group of English learners that contains students from all of your other assigned groups. And these are just a few examples, but there are many more possibilities in creating these groups. Custom groups can be created with the help of the advanced filters in CERS. When viewing assessments in CERS, users have the ability to filter down by student demographics or manner of testing. And we'll demonstrate this here shortly as we dig into those advanced filters. Users can filter by migrant status, English language acquisition status, which could either be English only, English learner, initial fluent English proficient, reclassified fluent English proficient, or to be determined, otherwise known as our TBDs. Race and ethnicity, an example we would want to look at could be Hispanic Latino students, our Asian subgroups, white, for example. And we can also look at primary language. And this is usually the time we get the question about filters such as special ed status or foster and homeless youth. So let's explain. Personally identifiable information about students can only be shared or redisclosed for specific purposes under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, and in compliance with all federal and California state statutes and regulations. Certain student level data, such as special education status, foster and homeless status, and free and reduced price meal information, is additionally protected from redisclosure under FERPA and other state and federal student privacy laws. CERS does not offer an advanced filter for special education or foster and homeless status because of these privacy concerns. For the filters we do have, users can choose multiple filters at one time. For example, one can filter by English learner and Asian, and CERS will show those students that fit into the two groups. And something that we look at as an LEA, we have Reading Core as tutoring and outside AmeriCorps source, and we have an ability to be able to filter students that are in that tutoring service to look at data within CERS. And we do have our Migrant Math Club as well. And so we're able to filter down to our migrant students to be able to look and see what's happening for those student groups. All right, so now we're going to do a quick demo of the customized groups. And just to reiterate, we're going to use the sandbox as we do in all our CERS trainings. And since this is an intermediate training, we will do one quick reminder that the sandbox has fictitious data and no actual student personal information, which makes it a great tool to utilize during trainings and to try out those functionalities of CERS on your own. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and navigate on over to CAASPP.org. I'm going to locate the California Educator Reporting System button, otherwise known as CERS. I'm going to log into that sandbox training tool we have right at our fingertips. And I'm going to choose the sample middle school teacher role. My dad's a middle school teacher. You are all wonderful. Thank you so much, teachers, for being here this afternoon with us. All right. So here's our CERS landing page. Those resources of the user guide, interpretive guide are here housed in CERS for you to use at your fingertips if you need any supports. Here is that assigned groups tab I mentioned, and you'll notice here in the sandbox, I do have 3 different grade level groups that have been assigned, or the other term is called roster, to me. But again, this is the sandbox. Over here, though, I have the My Groups tab where I'm able to build the custom groups. So let's get started. I'm going to click Create. You will notice here in the landing page that it will have the drop down of your different groups. You can search by student name. Here's that advanced filters piece here, but we'll come back to that in just a minute. So all of my 6th graders are here listed on the left side. So let's just go ahead and let's put on my teacher hat of building a group for my students that potentially have specific skills that they need reinforcement within small group instruction. So knowing my teachers, right, we have our tier 1 and our tier 2 supports we do in the classroom. So let's say John, as well as Felix, Cheryl, Jamie, and Ashley are my students. In analyzing summative data, I know that these students need specific skills and supports for reading comprehension. So they have been added over here on the right once I clicked the plus sign. If I accidentally made a mistake, I could delete a student and replace with the proper students, just a click of a button. In choosing subjects, you're able to look at one subject or just leave all. And the last part is giving your group a name in your custom groups, and then choosing Save at the top. It will direct you back to the page for the landing page within CERS. You'll notice here's that assigned groups tab that has my assigned students, but now on the My Groups tab, I have a custom group, and that's for my reading intervention students. At any time, you can come in and edit. You could remove all of the students if you needed to in building a new group as you are looking at maybe some quarter analysis with some assessment results. And then you would come back and click Save if you made any adjustments. And you could even delete the whole group and start all over again. But I'm going to click Cancel, and I want to go back and just show you what happened. So clicking my new group name of reading intervention, it has only the data in CERS for my 5 students. So I could come in and I could do some analysis around a particular interim assessment that I gave for just those 5 students and look at some analysis. Again, the sandbox does have, fictitious data, but here are my 5 kiddos. And so I needed to choose all of the sessions to be able to see their results here. But scrolling down, I can do some analysis around how my students are responding for specific assessments throughout the school year that I am giving any targeted instruction for. All right, so that is one way that we could build that custom group. Now I'm going to come again and create again another group with kind of a different lens. So I'm going to choose just a different grade level so you can see the drop down here. Here are my 7th graders that are assigned to me. I'm going to click the advanced filters button. So doing so gives those features I spoke to earlier. So migrant status, English language acquisition status, primary language, and race ethnicity. Remember in CERS, anytime you need information, just click the icon and it will give you what you're looking for. So let's say I would like to be able to do some analysis around my reclassified students. So knowing teachers, we have 4 years of which we are analyzing students' progress to make sure that our students are progressing once they have reclassified. When I click the reclassified filter, when I scroll down, you'll notice up here, it does show that one filter here. And then here are the students that are my RFEP students. I can add all of them to the right side at one time. Again, I can choose the different assessment subjects I would want or leave all. And then I give my student group a name. And clicking save. So now I have the 2 student groups, reading intervention and my RFEP students. Same thing, going in, I'm able to go in and just look at my student results for the assessments in my analysis to scroll down and look and see. So wonderful way to build a custom group when we're thinking around subgroup analysis around how we support our students. So going back home, I'm going to build one last group for you so you can see how we add across the different assigned groups. So I'm going to choose my 6th graders first. I'm going to go back to the advanced filters button here. Now I'm going to choose my English learners or my multilingual learners. And scrolling down, you'll notice that it has filtered down to just those students. Remember, you can choose an additional filter that you would like to use, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to just choose one for my multilingual learners. I'm going to add all of my students on the right. I'm going to scroll back up. I'm going to drop down to my next assigned group. Still has that filter marked. Add all of my 7th graders. And then last but not least, I'm going to go to my 8th graders, has my English learners checked, and add all of my students. So I now have my 6th, my 7th, and my 8th grade multilingual learner students all placed in one group. So when it comes to analysis, I'm able to just look at their progress and what's happening in comparison of the assessments. So clicking save, I now have my English learners, my multilingual learners. I can come in and I can select the different assessments. So if I want to look at their summative assessment results, for ELA, I would come to each grade level and just select that assessment. Scrolling down, here are my 15 multilingual learners in my 6th grade class and their summative ELA data. Here are my 7th graders, and here are my 8th grade multilingual learners. So wonderful tool right at our fingertips as teachers to be able to build groups that can help us as we're analyzing in our PLCs when we're talking around common themes for our instruction to determine those next steps. All right, so enough of me. It's now your turn. And you will have 5 minutes to go in to dig into the sandbox, or you're welcome to go into your live environment. Remember though, if you go into your live environment and you don't see any assigned groups, it means you will need to get in contact with your LEA or your site coordinator. And the instructions and the link to the sandbox are in your resource guide. And we just have one task for you. Go ahead and create a custom group. Anyone you want, one that I did or a very special one that's in your head. Alrighty, so we're going to invite you to come on back. I hope you were able to explore the system and maybe identify some certain groups that you've already got in your My Groups tab. And perhaps maybe you had a few new discoveries within CERS. All right, so we now want you to take 3 minutes to do some personal reflection. We have a question we want you to reflect on while thinking about your class or classes of students. What groups might you want to monitor? How might you customize these groups in CERS?
All right, we've got 2 questions so far. First up, some clarification around the custom groups. Someone is asking, did I hear you say that the groups have to be at least 30 kids? Or if not, there was a 30 kid rule mentioned. And can we do some clarifying about the size of custom groups and where that 30 students plays in?
Yes, absolutely. So to be able to see the target reports for our summative ELA and math assessments, you would need to have 30 students built into a group to be able to see the target reports. So knowing you have your 6th, your 7th, your 8th block classes, you can lump them all together. If you didn't quite have 30 students in one of your block, to be able to see students' performance for the target reports. So you can use a custom group to get around.
But custom groups in general, I can make them 5 kids, anything lower than 30 is fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, and then the second question for right now is, how do I create the rosters? Or if I need to know more, where should I go to get information about creating the rosters for teachers to access these groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the CAASPP.org website, we do have access to past trainings around rostering. So for our LEA and our site level coordinators to go to and access some resources there. It does include some of the step-by-step directions, how to download the template, fill it in. And once you do have that done, then everything would show in the CERS environment. So we encourage you to go and check out that recording beyond the basics for our coordinators and administrators to give you some of those tips.
Yeah, and I'm going to put in a shameless plug too. Or Stephanie, you came off mute. Did you want to?
No, go ahead.
So the CAASPP and ELPAC websites, the training header of the nav bar, you go to the asynchronous training opportunities pages. As Alicia mentioned, I'm going to recommend 2 spots. Start with the introduction to CERS trainings. Those happened last fall and summer. They're going to give you the basics, the how-tos, right? Download the template, fill out the template. What do all the fields mean? That kind of stuff. Load it back up. Then, if you want to be super fancy, watch the recording of the CERS Beyond the Basics for coordinators, and you'll get all the tips and tricks on how to be like really on top of your rosters and when to roster and how often to roster and things like that. So you come at it from both sides. And that's it. That's all we got for this Q&A, so we can move along.
Right. Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Fortunato from the Los Angeles County Office of Education. So happy to have all of our teachers joining us this afternoon. It's so great to have you here. Okay, so in this next section, we're going to provide examples of how educators might use data from interim assessments to improve teaching and learning in the classroom. Now, each of the different views available to educators offer unique opportunities to analyze the data and interpret it within an LEA's local context. Now, while some of this content was covered briefly in the introduction training, we're going to be digging in beyond the basics today. Now, results can be analyzed at the group level, the individual student level, and also the item level. Now, at each level, we will be providing highlights of appropriate use. Now, we do want to note that per Education Code 60642.7b, results from the interim assessments shall not be used for any high stakes purposes, including but not limited to teacher or other school staff evaluation, accountability, pupil grade promotion or retention, graduation, course or class placement, identification for gifted or talented education, reclassification of English learners, or identification as an individual with exceptional needs. All right, now we're going to go ahead and begin with features that are specific for each interim assessment. And so these features are going to include individual item results, student responses to items, results by item either individually or in the aggregate, which means teachers can see how an individual student performed on the item and how a group of students performed on the item. We'll also see item level information tabs. And let me point out that this tab is really loaded with lots of great information that teachers like to know, such as the claim and target, which is going to provide the topic area and particular knowledge and skills tested by the item. Also the item difficulty, which is based on the item's difficulty for students in a reference population, such as it being easy, moderate, or difficult. But please do note that the item difficulty doesn't change based on the group of students the teacher's looking at results for. This is based on how the item field tested. Also, the applicable academic standards for each item. Now, for smarter balanced assessments, the standards refer to the Common Core State Standards for ELA and for math. For the California Science Test, this is the related performance expectations. And for the ELPAC, this refers to the English language development or those ELD standards. All right, we're also going to look at group item level analysis, and that's going to include the percentage or the number of students in the selected group who earned full credit or the maximum number of points for an item. Educators can also view the scored point distribution or the percentage of students at each score point. And finally, the key distractor analysis. And this is when teachers get really excited about hearing about a feature that goes beyond the basics of just test scores. Now, before we demo these features, there is some additional information that we want to cover with you. So we're going to go ahead and start with the default view in CERS for assessment data. And this is the results by student view. Now, when educators select an individual student and then select to view the student responses, we will get the individual student item results and responses view. So on this screen here, you can see those responses there for Tim. Now, back on the results by student view, we can change the view to show the results by item by changing the results view dropdown from results by student to results by item. And this changes our view away from how each student did to how each item was responded to. Now, a quick reminder, if you don't see results by item as an option, then you're probably viewing a summative assessment and not an interim assessment. So remember, this view is only available for interim assessments. Now, in this example, I've sorted the results by full credit by clicking on the full credit section of the header. So here you'll see we have 3 items in the reading information text claim that sort to the top. Now, we know from this that 52% of students got full credit on items 14 and 10, and 57% got full credit in item 12. And this is exactly the type of granular data that the interim assessments provide, which may indicate a need maybe for some additional support or where there might be some common misconceptions. All right, next up is the individual student item results and responses view. And this takes us again beyond the basics of results by students as a group. So here we can dig into how one student did across all the items in the interim assessment. Now, this view includes the number of points the student earned on the item, which is the maximum points available for that item. And also you'll see the correctness of the student's response, which is the ratio of the student's points to the maximum point. So for example, a student who earned 1 point out of a maximum of 2 would have a correctness value of 0.50. And this shows us here that Tim missed item number 3 and also item number 5. So Tim's teacher can then take a look at items 3 and 5 and have the information to provide instructional support to the student. Now, as the teacher, I might want to even maybe pull some small groups of students together who also missed items 3 and 5 and maybe discuss certain trends with the responses, or perhaps I might even want to dig deeper into the standard to design maybe some instructional support, maybe over the next unit of instruction, maybe over the next 6 weeks, or maybe I might even want to use it as a pre and post assessment. So lots of great options that you could do with this data. All right, next, this item level information. So maybe we want to dig into what these items are specifically that are maybe even throwing off 48% of our students. So here we see for question 14, right, 52% received full credit, but 48% of our students didn't, right? So to do this, we can simply select the item itself, and this is going to give us some item level information, which let's take a look at it on this next slide. So this is that item viewer tab. Now, when viewing by item, the item number is shown at the top left for the item being viewed. Now, there are tabs that are available for providing additional details about the item. So you'll see there we have the student points and responses. We have the item viewer, rubric and exemplar, and also item information. Now, we've already gone over student points and responses. The item viewer tab displays the assessment item as it appeared on the test, but it does not show the student's responses. So those student responses are found in another tab. Now, by examining the student points and responses tab, and also the item itself, educators can really work to identify what might be some patterns in how students are responding. And that might reveal maybe a common misconception or maybe a misunderstanding. So if you have, for example, several students are maybe choosing the same incorrect response, then educators can isolate areas to revisit with the entire class, or again, even in some small groups. All right, the rubric and exemplar tab. Now this displays the answer key or an exemplar and the rubric for the assessment item. Now the exemplar panel provides the correct answer and in some cases multiple correct answers. Now for selected response test items such as maybe a multiple choice or a multiple select, or maybe evidence-based selected responses, you'll also then find a key or an answer key that will be shown as well. Now, the rubric panel can also describe the point values that are associated with specific responses, if in fact it was a rubric scored item. So we know that some questions require that. All right, the item information tab displays a detailed description of the assessment item. Now, features that are shown in the item information view might include things like the claim or the domain information, the assessment target if it's applicable to the test, the depth of knowledge or DOK level, or the performance level descriptor level if it happens to be for an ELPAC interim, the item difficulty, the content standard, as well as some links to supporting documentation. Now, as we go beyond the basics in this training, you may want to consider ways educators can use this results view. So one example that's been shared locally with me is how teachers use the item drop-down arrow to show item details and maybe have a classroom discussion with students about answer selections. This way, students are able to learn from one another, and they can really work to build a deeper understanding about how to identify which answers are correct. You might also be thinking as teachers, using this information tab here to plan units of instruction, maybe with your fellow colleagues, maybe during your professional learning community time, or maybe if you have those vertical team meetings, this is great information to be able to use for that as well. All right, I love this one, the key distractor analysis. Now, before we dive into our demo, let's on how to actually navigate CERS with all of these, we want to cover this last piece here. So we know that for selected response items for the interim assessments, teachers can analyze whether a large number of students selected a particular incorrect response. And that might signal a common misconception about a topic or skill. Now, this report is available by selecting key distractor analysis from the dropdown in the Select a Results view. Now, when the key distractor analysis view is active, the results panel shows an aggregate view similar to that of the results by item table, but with the percent distribution of student responses by answer option. Now, in the key distractor analysis view, the students' score point levels are replaced by columns that indicate the percentage or the number of students who selected each answer choice. Now, the correct answers you'll see here are highlighted in green. So let's take a look there at item number 1. We can see there was only one right answer, which was answer B, and we can see that 63% of students got it correct. We can also see that 19% of students chose answer C, and 6% of students chose answer D. So again, as we're looking beyond the basics, you may want to consider, in our county office, teachers were discussing how they were using this key distractor analysis to meet with students one-on-one, maybe in those small groups, to really reinforce those key concepts and to work through some of those distractor choices that are there. So really using the interims is such a valuable way for teachers to even use these items as maybe a pre and a post test, where teachers can really gauge, how students are improving as the year is progressing. And I do want to also highlight there is that export button that you're going to see in CERS, and that's available for you to be able to export the results as a CSV file, a comma separated value type file. I know a lot of folks like to be able to export that data and be able to use it for all sorts of really great purposes. All right, so we're going to go into our next demonstration. So excited to be able to share a lot of these features with you. Just like Alicia did earlier, you're going to be starting at that CAASPP.org homepage. And when you are selecting the button here for the California Educator Reporting System, we're using this CERS Sandbox training tool to access the sandbox. Great for demo purposes. I'm going to go ahead and select the user role. I'm going to enter as a sample middle school teacher. And now I'm going to enter the sandbox here. And I'm going to go ahead for our demonstration. I know this is where we were looking earlier at the assigned groups and your my groups. I'm going to take a look at grade 7. And I'm going to select an interim assessment for us to take a look at. In this case, grade 7, read literary text. So I'm going to uncheck the summative ELPAC results. And I'm going to scroll down and show you, here are all of the different sessions that were used to administer. So you're going to want to make sure that you are highlighting each of these sessions so that you are capturing all of your student results. And in the Intro to CERS training, we went over some of this group level data. For our Beyond the Basics, though, we're going to go ahead here and let's take a look. This is that view we were talking about a moment ago about the results by individual student. Here we can see that the data is automatically sorted by student last name, but we're going to want to use these column headers and sort our data here. We could either sort by ascending or descending order. So when I do this, I can also even sort by the scale score. I'm going to take a look at my first student here, Dorothy Arviso. And this is where, by selecting Dorothy's name, I have the option of taking a look at Dorothy's responses on this interim assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and select Dorothy. And here I can see that on this interim assessment for read literary text, I can see that there were 20 questions that were on this interim assessment. And I want to sort so I can specifically see maybe which questions Dorothy struggled with the most. So as I scroll over to the column header here on student points, I want to sort this so I can see which question items here Dorothy did not receive any credit. So I can see that would be question number 2, 6, 9, 15, 19, and 20. She did not receive full credit. this would be the great chance where I could maybe pull Dorothy aside, have that conversation, take a look at those individual items here. And maybe I might want to even pull other students just like Dorothy who also maybe missed question number 2 here, right? So you have the option of being able to look at the actual test item here and have those small group conversations. So that's how you're able to actually take a look at student individual responses on an interim assessment. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my groups. So that's how we can look at the information by student. I want to make sure I'm highlighting this interim assessment here once again and capturing my data with all of the different sessions. And I can see here also I have 123 student results. I'm going to go ahead next and take a look at results by item. And this is going to give you much more granular data here. Here I can see again that I'm able to look at my column headers. I can look at the item difficulty. I can sort this column. I get information here about the claim, the target, and I can look here too at the student score distribution, right? How the scores are distributed over a 0, a 1, or a 2. Sorting this column here on full credit, I can easily see which question items my class struggled with the most as a group. And if I want more information about this item, I'm going to take a look here at item number 14. And I can see here are those really great, lots of information, all these tabs, student points and responses. So for question 14, now I can look at my students and how they responded. Again, I can sort for this particular question, the student points, and right away with the click of a button, I can see which students missed this question. I can take a look at the item itself. Here it tells me that the key was letter choice C, but I can go ahead and display this with that group of students right here, right? So I've got all of that information. I can see information here in the rubric and exemplar. And here, I love this tab here. Item information gives me the claim. I can see the target, the depth of knowledge for this question 14, the item difficulty, the standard, and if there is any of that supporting information, the documentation here, I can click this hyperlink that will take me to that interpretive guide. So lots of great information that I'm able to get here about individual test items. So again, student points, item viewer, rubric and exemplar, and item information. You're going to have a chance in just a little bit to go ahead and take a look at all of these great results views in CERS. All right, last one I want to show you, one more, is that key distractor analysis. And here is where we were talking about how you can take a look at this data and find out which questions had some distractor items. And you'll note too that you won't find this necessarily for every single question on the interim assessment, but for some of these interims on quite a bit of them. So just looking at these here, again, I'm going to sort this column here on full credit. I can see also question 20 was one that my students struggled with, right? I can see the claim and the target, the item difficulty, here's that standard. 50% of my students chose the correct answer, but look at these distractor items. 14% chose B, 14% chose C, and 14% chose D. Well, gosh, what does item 20 look like? Again, click of a button, I can go ahead, I can scroll down, I can see which of those students are and how did they actually respond. Here I've got their answer choices. Again, remember, you can sort the student points column, but now I can take a look at this question. We can have that conversation in small groups. Why is choice B, C, and D not the correct answer? Why are they those distractor items, right? What could potentially be some misconceptions that students may have even had in this question? So such a great opportunity to be able to do that with all of these beyond the basic features that are here in CERS available to you. All right, lots of great info there. Let me go ahead and go back to our slide here. I know that there have got to be some great questions that have been coming up.
We don't
No.
actually have any questions at the moment.
Oh my gosh, I was so thorough. Let's hear it.
You were so thorough. Two little housekeeping things. The link to the PowerPoints at the top of the resource guide and the recording of the training. Give us about a week. It'll be on the Asynchronous Training Opportunities webpage.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that was easy. All right. Well, I'm going to pass it back on over to Alicia, who's going to take it from there.
All righty, thanks, Stephanie. All right, thank you, teachers, again for being here at 4:24 on a Tuesday. You're awesome. So in this next section, we will review the different types of printable reports that teachers can generate in CERS, including individual student reports or ISRs. I get very excited about this section. I can't talk. All right, so individual student reports, or ISRs, include results from state assessments that students complete throughout the school year. CERS provides teachers with access to ISRs for the following assessments: Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments for English Language Arts and Mathematics, California Science Test, or CAST, California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs, for ELA and Mathematics, CAA for Science, California Spanish Assessment, Summative English Language Proficiency Assessments for California, or ELPAC, Summative Alternate ELPAC, and Interim Assessments, including the Smarter Balance Interim Assessments for ELA and Mathematics. Please note, aggregate and student level data can be found in CERS for the new CAST and ELPAC Interim Assessments, but individual student reports, or ISRs, will be available to download in CERS coming in summer 2024. And we will review more information about ISRs on this next slide. So individual student reports are designed for you, teachers, but they can also be shared and reviewed with students and families. This should be done with the teacher present to provide context, not sent home for families to interpret on their own. ISRs help provide a summary of how each student is performing as measured by the assessments that are selected for each report. Educators can use these reports as a one part of an academic wellness check to support students. Assessment results, when analyzed alongside additional information about individual students, can strengthen conclusions about how students are progressing and help identify areas of strength in areas where students may benefit from additional instruction or support. ISRs and state assessment data should be used together with other information, such as classwork and local assessment data when making instructional decisions. ISRs can be requested and downloaded for each individual student when analyzing assessment data in CERS. Teachers can also generate them in bulk as a printable report for groups of students. And I'll show you this life-saving tip in just a minute in another demo. And please note that our individual student reports will undergo a redesign in the coming school year. So be on the lookout for some updates as they become available. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and navigate on over to CAASPP.org once more, but please note that these can be accessed individually or in bulk, and that's what I will show you. So I'm going to head on over to show you both of those things. All right, so back into CERS and going back to our sandbox training tool. I'm going to give my respect to our middle school teachers once more and choose the role of a teacher. All right, so the first way to download an ISR is from that individual student level. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in here one of our, oh goodness, of course, my computer didn't save it right, so let me type it in. All right, so going in by the SSID for an individual student, it's going to give you this very zoomed out view of students' assessment data. For the current school year, you can even go 2 years back. So this is ideal in maybe those IEP types of settings or family meetings around a particular student to pull it quickly in CERS, just having that SSID. But I want to navigate on over to our printable reports here. Down here, I want to show you really quick though, that zoomed out view, what you're able to see, that overall achievement level and skill score error band, but it looks very different than an ISR. So coming up here to the top right-hand corner for printable reports, it's going to give you these options again for the student. You can change the school year. You can just look at interim assessments if you wanted to, or summative, or you can leave it as all. Coming to the subject, you can pull a specific subject. If you wanted to include if the student tested elsewhere, so when we think of summative assessments, a student from the previous school year, you could either show or hide. And our student accommodations will not show on an ISR for privacy reasons. So clicking Create Report, it's going to bring you to the My Reports section. You'll notice here in CERS, up at the top right-hand corner is My Reports. So when I chose printable download reports, it brought me right here. Depending upon the size of the file, it can download quickly. If it's one student, one assessment, if we're thinking the class as a whole, it does take longer. So because this is one student, it is already complete. And you would come here to the three dots to download that report data. I did already go ahead and download it. And it gives you this beautiful PDF file that gives you the overall view of how students did for the assessments. So little lay of the land here for the ISR. So an interim assessment blocks report title. It'll give you the grade, the school site, district. It will give some explanations, some summaries around what items mean on the ISR. Please keep in mind though, when we have interim assessments in mind, there are only the 3 achievement levels of below standard, near standard, and above standard. We will still get that skill score and error band with an interim assessment as well, but it is different than a summative assessment because we have the 4 achievement levels and then different skill score ranges. But the power of an ISR in thinking, like Stephanie mentioned earlier, if I have a student with me and we are going over their ISR in a goal setting type of opportunity, I'm able, if I had given this interim previously, I can show students in their progress as we think of family conferences that are coming up very soon for a lot of you in this room. What a great tool to have in person with your families around how students are progressing, and then maybe some next steps, right? If maybe the student isn't progressing as much as we would like to see. So scrolling down, I'm still at that one individual student from the sandbox. You'll notice here, this is another interim assessment, has that 3 levels. This is for read informational text. But this test below here is a performance task where there is that specific genre that student was given on that task. So it will list it here. And then it will give you the 3 categories for scoring and how teacher did score in the hand scoring system. I'm gonna, in the next part of the demo, head on over to a summative assessment and talk through another area around performance tasks for students. But scrolling down, I did select all of the assessments for the student, but you can see, now I have the summative assessment report for this ISR. So you'll notice there's those 4 achievement levels. We still get that skill score and error band, but the beautiful part around the printable PDF here is you're able to see where those skill score ranges were within the achievement levels. So if I'm a student and I know I'm right here and I just need, oh my goodness, a few more points to be at that next achievement level, talk about the power of a visual, not only for our students, but then also for our families as well. All right, so I want to go back now over into my CERS landing page. Sorry about that. I'm going to go home because I want to show you how you can access an ISR from a different level. So I'm going to come in here to my 7th grade group. I can go into a specific assessment and generate an ISR as well. So if I come in here and I want to find my 7th grade ELA summative, I'll get rid of the ELPAC there, and scrolling down, I can come to that individual student level. Again, I can come and print her ISR, but now I am from a specific assessment that I want to print for. So coming to the 3 dots, printing Kim's summative report, it will bring me here. I don't have the opportunity with the drop downs to choose multiple because I'm at a specific assessment. But if I come here and create that report, it will bring me right back to the My Report section. It will show me that pending status until it has been completed. But for time's sake, I had already went through the process of keeping it safe for us. All right, so now I have my ISR. I did show a summative assessment on the last student example, but this is for an ELA assessment for the performance task. Has the 4 achievement levels, scale score error band here, gives some summary around how student is progressing, helps our teachers in the moment with families and language where sometimes we're tired at the end of the day and we might be grasping at what we need to say, like me at some point today. But scrolling down, this is the best part, and I get so happy. The writing purpose. This is actually the genre that your student was assigned last year on the summative assessment. So think about the power for you as a teacher at the start of the year, having access to download in bulk your class, look at how they did with specific genres. With each of those categories, evidence elaboration, organization purpose, and conventions to know, oh my goodness, I right away notice a theme with my students. We are pretty strong with evidence and elaboration, but the low-hanging fruit around conventions, a lot of my students earned a 1 out of 2 last year. A great way in which you're able to plan for your instruction and make those decisions, right, throughout the school year. And then the power of a team, talking about themes as a team and how you might build some supports across the year to be able to tackle these different categories and how we support students in mastering how to prepare for these rigorous performance tasks. It will also give you a condition code here, which could be a student was off purpose, or there was non-scorable language. Kiddo just type whatever they wanted to and didn't even attempt the task. That is valuable information for us as teachers, not only individually for our students, but then even as a grade level or even as a site when we're thinking of site themes of support. So super powerful in how you download an ISR for the ELA summative assessments, because it's going to give you this rich information here. All right. So the last way that you're able to generate the reports is in bulk, right? When we want to download for all of our students. So the way we would do that is going to the student group that we'd want to download for. So I'll just choose the 6th graders here. Up in the top right-hand corner is that printable reports button. Once more, clicking there, I now have all of the drop downs. I could choose last school year. I can look at just summative. I can look at all of the assessments, particular subjects, whatever you would want to download for, and then create report. Now, keep in mind, again, the size of the file that you're downloading, the one student's going to go pretty quick. But when we are generating an ISR for every one of our students, either for all of the subjects, for interims, as well as summatives, it can take a while. So just keep that in mind as you go back and think of how we might utilize ISRs with our families. I know my teachers have a handful of grade levels with conferences coming up where they're going to have these conferences in person, conversations around the ISRs and student progress and goal setting opportunities before it is go time for our CAASPP assessments. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and navigate on over back to the presentation here because it's your turn to go back into the sandbox. Go in with that teacher role in mind, either into your live environment or into that sandbox. The instructions in the link are in your resource guide for how to do that. And then you can do one or all of the tasks. So you can go in, you really want to see the key distractor analysis that Stephanie shared. Please do so during this time. You could go in and create an ISR for one student like I modeled, or even in bulk for an entire class, because you're like, she's right. Conferences are happening. I can take this information next week with my families and have conversations. So the time is yours and your choice. It is 4:38. We will come back in 5 minutes. So that brings us to 4:43. We'll see you soon. All righty. So we're going to welcome you back. Hoping you were able to explore the system, whether it was the interims to go back to Stephanie's portion of the demo or the power of an ISR. I'm wondering if anybody was able to find a student who had a condition code on an ISR from last year's summative assessments. Hoping that you enjoyed your time and learning something new with a new report. All right, so now we want to go back and do some personal reflection. And here's the question that we would like you to reflect upon. How might I use printable reports to support student learning and goal setting in my classroom? And it's time for, once again, to pause for questions that might have surfaced.
No, we had a question about how to get the ISRs in bulk, but we covered that. The steps are in the resource guide and they got to do that in the exploration time. And there was one other question about the language of the ISRs, and we learned that they're only available in English.
Yes, that is true. And the last part of my demo was in bulk. Just going to your assigned student group and choosing printable reports on the top right once you have your group selected, and you're able to decide what you'd like to download. All righty, Stephanie, pass it back on over to you, my friend.
All right, awesome. Well, we have one last topic before we wrap up, and that is CERS resources to support you in your use of CERS. Now, as we talk about each resource, you'll notice that the links are in your resource guide. Now, that makes it super easy for you to have access to all of these great resources in one place. So we're going to go ahead and start with some CERS resources. Now, again, all of these are in your resource guide. We already mentioned the CERS user guide, but we do want to make sure to call your attention to it again. Now, we also covered the CERS sandbox, which we know from today is such an excellent tool for you to use. There's also a few quick reference guides, which will walk you step by step on various CERS functions, such as how to view results by school, how to view individual student results, and also how to view individual writing trait scores. There's also some great videos that are available to support use of CERS at all levels. And again, the links to both of these videos are in your resource guide, and those are going to be the Understanding the California Educator Reporting System video, and also the Creating Groups in the California Educator Reporting System video. And we want to mention the CERS resources webpage, which includes lots of information and additional resources, such as a link to the SIS to CERS integration page, and also the videos we mentioned previously. All right, well, let's review where we've been and what we're now able to do. So we can create those custom groups using advanced filters. We can view features that are specific to interim assessments. We can generate those printable reports, including those ISRs. Also locate those CERS resources. And finally, we were able to answer your questions today. So we're so happy that we were able to spend some time doing that. Now, all right, well, with that, we've come to the official end of our training, and we appreciate the questions that you've asked, and we hope that you found today's session and the opportunity to really explore the system informative and helpful. And we also hope that you found some useful information that takes you beyond the basics in using the California Educator Reporting System. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and drop a link. We want your feedback and ask that you take just a few moments to complete a quick survey on how we can improve our trainings here. We would really appreciate it. So when you close the Zoom, you might also see that link that's going to take you to a survey in your browser. And so take just a few moments to be able to give us some feedback so that we can use it for our planning purposes. So with that, on behalf of the CDE and the Sacramento County Office of Education and your training team here, we thank you for spending your time with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at a future training soon. So have a great evening, everyone.